Hello, everyone, and welcome to my latest Substack Live conversation with people over 50 who are changing their beliefs and lives or have already, and the ways that our lives are better now that we are over 50 than they were when we were younger. So, my guest today is Lauren Gabriel Foster. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for
And
having
I'll
me.
just let you introduce yourself and why you wanted to have this conversation.
Okay, absolutely. Well, my name is Lauren Foster. I'm the author of Happy and Free on Purpose: Daily Practices to Live and Love Your Life. And it's a on purpose has a double meaning. It means that you are on your path according to your purpose that is very uniquely your own, and also that you're doing it deliberately. And you are, consciously choosing to create your life the way that you want. And not based on any outside criteria or anything like that. So, the most interesting part of my story, I'm a happiness coach and spiritual mentor and primal health coach. And I read tarot cards and I channel and I do all kinds of fun and amazing things. um, but the coolest thing that I've done recently is that I sold everything. At the end of 2023 and in January of 24, I hit the road. I started traveling around with just what I can carry in a backpack. And I've been doing that ever since. And I'll do that until I fall in love with some place or person or thing or situation or something. I think I just counted up, I've been to 10 countries um, since I started traveling. And it's been just amazing and enlightening. And when you go out and see for yourself what the world is like, you will never watch the news again because it gives us this impression that the world is so scary and so dangerous and that people are so bad and will take advantage of you. And that it's just not the case. 99.9% of the people I've encountered in my travels have been kind and generous and helpful. And um yeah, and amazing. So i'm I'm loving putting together stories about my travels and just witnessing the way that humanity connects with one another and connects with spirit, connects with community, and being able to share all of that magic with anyone that wants to know it.
Absolutely. That is fantastic and inspirational. The closest I can come to that is when I was younger, my husband and I lived in Pennsylvania, and we took a vacation to Hawaii to celebrate our 10th anniversary, and absolutely fell in love with the spiritual vibe of the place. The people, the underwater world was like my cathedral. It was just so magnificent that we returned. We were already talking on the plane ride home about how we could live there. We put our house on the market. As soon as it sold, we quit our jobs, drove cross country, shipped the car to Maui, took one-way flights, landed, no place to live, no jobs lined up, and made it work for 10 glorious years.
Nice.
Ultimately wasn't financially sustainable, and there just aren't very many career options on an island in the middle of the Pacific. But no regrets about doing it at all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people would love to know how you're able to do the kind of traveling you're doing now. Do you work as a digital nomad, or are you retired with a pension? What makes it possible for you to do these things?
Well, a lot of the at the beginning, the launch of this trip was based on that was funded by the proceeds of selling all of my worldly possessions, right?
Okay.
and I am building slowly my business as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor, and I write online. I have all kinds of side gigs and coaching gigs and things like that that are meant to be when the money from the house runs out, that's hopefully that's going to come back up and meet that, and I
Right.
can continue to do all of this. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Oh, now wait. Another very interesting thing along those lines, though, is that I hardly ever pay for lodging because I pet sit
Very
all
good.
over the
Yes,
world.
that's a
Yeah.
great idea. I know other people who house sit or pet sit, and
Mhm.
yes, that does make it much more possible to see the world and
Mhm.
enjoy it. Yes.
Yeah, and you meet, pet lovers I have found are, and people will caution me again. We caution each other about making general statements, but I think if they're loving and positive, we can make general statements. And
Mhm.
and so I state that animal lovers are special, and they're generous, and they're just a different breed of people. And I've loved every single family that I have met in this process, and just I've made friends all over the world, just connecting through their pets. So that's pretty remarkable. And it, anyone who says they can't afford to travel is just being. th- Anybody can afford to travel. There is always a way to have what you want. So don't ever let that negative thinking keep you from trying and going after the things that you want. It's
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into talking about the beliefs we had when we were younger that we have changed, and how letting go of those limiting beliefs has helped us more fully embrace our authentic selves and create the lives that we want, or at least move in that direction.
Mhm.
So I know when you and I first connected, you shared that the limiting beliefs that you let go of, one of the most important were some religious beliefs that your body was bad or you were bad. Can you share a little bit more about that, and how and why you changed that?
I don't know if I can share a little bit, but I can share a lot.
Go for it.
um, so my introduction into the church as a youth was beautiful and amazing. I had a minister of youth and music he just created this little world for us kids where we sang and acted and put on plays and did everything together, and we were taught to love each other and respect each other and look out for each other and not judge, and all the real things
Hmm.
that we're supposed to learn in church, right?
Hmm.
But a series of events kind of, and I was in the church every time the doors were open. I was devoted. I stood before the church at like 13 years old and committed my life to missionary service,
Hmm.
because I was like, I this is so incredibly joyful to me. I would like nothing better than to travel the world and help other people to feel this way, right? So I had this bug in me when I was just a young girl. But then they went away to Brazil to be missionaries themselves. They're amazing people, wonderful young family. Our pastor was caught in an indiscretion and booted out, and the red flag for me, what's happening, what I thought we forgive, I thought we didn't judge. This was already starting to be just really not feeling right. And then our church burned down, and so the structure was just all gone. And the new people that came were suddenly giving us messages like, don't wear your eye makeup that way because you look provocative and you could cause a man to lust, and and that will make him sin, and that will be your fault,
Right.
right? And just all sorts of messages like that we're just sinners and we're never going to be able to measure up to what God wants us to be, but we still have to try. And if you don't say these words, you're going to hell. And if the people across the globe that have never heard of this, they're going to hell too, and it's your fault if you don't go tell them. And just
Right.
right. So just all of this, that all culminated, and by the time I was 15 or 16, um I just didn't think that there was a place for with God for me anymore. I wasn't willing to do all the things that I had to do to be worthy. So I spent the next few decades of my life, being. I mean, I had a happy life. Don't get me wrong. I had lots and lots of fun and had successes and failures and a rich and full life, but it was also full of self sabotage and abuse of my body and lack of self respect and lack of esteem in myself as a human being. And so therefore I had relationships where I was taken advantage of, and I was, not treated right. Um, and just all of those things, like a spiritless life, a very shallow, kind of meaningless, kind of purposeless, and kind of a lone feeling kind of way of living. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I started, and it started with the law of attraction. I loved studying the law of attraction, but to me, that wasn't a spiritual thing. That was a mental thing. It was science and
Hmm.
vibration, and right. And but I fell in love with Abraham Hicks, which is, I mean, that's channeled information. But I'm like, I didn't just. I'm like, it's channeled, whatever. I didn't care where it came from. I'm like, I like the stuff that they're saying. But if you listen to things like that long enough, your mind starts to open,
Hmm.
and then that just kind of opened up cracks in all other kinds of areas, and I began to understand that what I had been taught about who God is was not necessarily the truth, and to, begin exploring this more and to form my own beliefs about what spirit is and what it means to be spiritual, and our innate worth, each and every one of us, as these precious human beings that we all have. And what wasn't some grand awakening, it was a very gradual growth, and a growth that continues. um you know I discover limiting beliefs in myself all the time. I'm like, oh my God, where did that thought come from? And then you go, okay, let's sort that, and add that into the equation and move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and that's sometimes one of the most um, destructive messages in the self-help industry is like this endless treadmill of you can never be good enough. But the flip side is here's this enlightened spiritual guru who has reached perfection and will get you there for a price, if you believe and do exactly what they tell you to. And
Mm-hmm.
so, we're so desperate for things to go right in our lives sometimes that we trust the wrong people and get taken advantage of.
Hmm.
And my spiritual journey was in some ways the opposite. Like you, I had a good initial experience in the church. I had a pastor who actually inspired me to be a pastor, and his wife was my high school English teacher, and we're still in touch with each other. And he married my husband and I, and all of that kind of thing. Um, but yet, after I graduated from seminary and became a pastor, um, it just became clearer to me that even in quote unquote progressive Christian denominations, that ordained women and there were LGBTQ affirming and all the rest, there was still this underlying patriarchy, misogyny, um, like you said, overall message that we're all sinners and God hates us. But because Jesus died on the cross, like he took the punishment that we deserve, and therefore we can avoid going to hell if we believe the right things, and our religion is the only true one, and so we have to convince everyone else of these things. And that just never worked for me. I was all about the love, and like you said, if you the actual Jesus as portrayed in the gospels, what he said, what he taught, how he treated people, how he told his followers to treat people.
Hmm.
And I was seeing how far away from that the church was, or at least some people in the church. To be clear, I have some wonderful Christian friends who are social justice activists, and that are trying to truly live as Jesus did, and told his followers to. But there was just too much other baggage tied up in there, and I wasn't, even things that seem innocuous like baptism ceremonies where we proclaim that we welcome you into God's family. You like to me that child was always in God's family, and it doesn't matter whether they're ever baptized or not, or ever Christian or not. Everyone is in God's family and equally beloved.
Hmm.
um
Yeah, that this message that you've somehow got to earn your way into the magic,
exactly.
or yeah, or have somebody that is closer to God bring you in. And yeah, it always, disturbs me when anyone says that I can show you the way to God, because
Yes.
we all have our path to God, and we don't need anybody else. We don't need a tarot card. We don't need a preacher. We don't need a book of any kind. We get to connect to, and to me, spirit is in every atom. It's not some mystical being in the sky. And Yeah, and that's another thing that I feel like has really harmed us as Western people and as modern people is that, we suddenly turned all our attention from here up, the brain and the man in the sky, and our bodies aren't sacred anymore. The earth isn't sacred anymore. The environment that nourishes us
Hmm.
has no power and no reverence, and men think they're smarter than Mother Nature and they're screwing up our planet.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And so many horrible things have been justified by claiming that, this is what God wants, and or God has told me to do and told me to teach you to do, or whatever.
Mhm.
And on top of that, there's the condemnation and the judgment of, what you believe is not okay because it's not what I believe, and I'm right, of course.
Right. Yeah.
And that was another reason why I ultimately, after becoming a pastor and loving some aspects of ministering to people in grief and helping them through various crisis situations, but yet being really uncomfortable. I still remember vividly when one guy came into my office and had spiritual questions that he expected me to have the right answers to. And I said, I'm not any closer to God than you are. You don't have to go through me. Like, if I pray for you, it's not going to be, get better results than if you pray for yourself, that kind of thing. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, he was disillusioned and angry when he left. And he was like, when I go to a plumber, I expect them to know how to fix my toilet when I can't. So, yeah, and I'm like, well, sorry, but that's not how it works.
Oh, that's fabulous. We'll make that part of our advertising. We are not your spiritual plumber.
I like that. Yes. And the other
Yeah.
issue for me was, being a pastor, I was spending all of my time with people who were already Christian, or who had, come to visit our church and were exploring maybe, or were friends or family of church members. And there was just this exclusivity. And I wanted to minister to everyone and show love to everyone, and serve the community and the world and the planet, and not be constrained by this idea that, okay, I'm an employee and my job is, even though they claim that your pastors aren't really employees, but we really are. um, you know I didn't want my job to be only serving this group of people who shows up to worship,
Mhm.
um, much less trying to convince other people that they should be there.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
being a mental and spiritual health coach has been incredibly liberating for me, because I'm so passionate about helping people who have come from religious traditions where they were shamed, where they were told it's not okay to question any of this, you must accept it, and your pastor, priest, whoever is the spiritual expert. So they know what they're talking about and you don't, so you better shut up and listen and obey.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm actually in training at the moment for in ministry training for it's called One Spirit Interfaith Ministry. So it's all religions and no religion.
Hmm.
It's really just sort of getting us in a place where we're able to meet anyone wherever they are from any faith path, from whether it's a faith path that they are deeply devoted to or one that they're trying to escape from, and everything in between. Right,
Yes.
we're equipped to minister to and walk beside them, no matter where they come from. In those studies we delve a lot into a lot of the major religions. Of course, I know the most about Christianity
Right.
already because that's what I was raised in, but I also find that that's the one that I'm most fascinated by, because studying all of the things that were left out and changed and lost in translation, like
Hmm.
the New Testament, the real translations of the Bible, where are like the Lord's Prayer, where it starts out, "Our Father who art in heaven." The original is Father Mother. It was not a male figure. It was the birther. It included all of the energies and all of the magic, right? That this earth, this essence that created me is what it referred to, not Big Daddy. That's mean and mad at me, right? Um, and seeing it's still even now. I feel like I'm going to get struck by lightning for being so irreverent and blasphemous, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because to be a pastor, I had to get a master's degree and go to seminary and study the Bible in great detail for 4 years. Um, and as you said, it's very eye opening. Like once you realize, no, this wasn't like magically handed down from the sky in the form we have it now. And even the most ancient manuscripts, they're like found in different locations of the same book now of the Bible or say different things. And as they were recopied by scribes and then translated into other languages, I mean, it's a whole complicated process. And
Hmm.
then there's the whole issue of, who decided which books would become the Bible and which ones would be left out.
Hmm.
And I mean, a whole slew of things, and new translations and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
But
and
as
the
you
whole
said, that it all,
politics around
yeah,
the way the Bible was created
it
by the
and it
Catholics.
became all about um, human control and doctrines and dogma and humans claiming to fully understand God and have this whole theology around who God is, what God wants you to do and not do, the consequences if you don't do this or do this, and all of it. And it just made me. There's a saying that seminary is where you go to have your answers questioned, and it's so true, and it's liberating. But the problem is then you have this big gulf between pastors and the understanding that we have of how the Bible came to be and the people in the pews. And if we try to have that kind of education and that kind of discussion about that whole process, for many people that is too threatening to their faith and what they've always believed and been taught, and it's just totally not okay. And so there's a negative backlash.
Yeah,
Um, and of course, with any group of humans, you have different people with different power dynamics, different family issues that all play into any group of humans gathering.
hmm,
Um, but yeah, like you, I just knew that the overarching message is love, and that message isn't limited to what Jesus taught and modeled. All of the great spiritual teachers have embodied that and have taught that in various ways, and their followers have dedicated themselves to that. So right now, I'm very drawn to Buddhist teachings and leaders, um, and that emphasis on just wishing everyone well and being calm and seeking to help people without judging them, and to love ourselves too and not judge ourselves, which is the hardest of all for many of us.
hmm.
um,
Yeah, yeah. So my favorite idea for humanity is for each and every one of us to stand in our sovereignty and in our connection to one another, right? Because if you are in perfect understanding that you are a divine being in your own right, and you are perfectly the captain of your ship, and able to communicate with your creator, with your highest self, any way that you want. And you also have the benefit of knowing that there's no place where you end and everyone else and everything else and all of life begins. That's just this magical place where you're strong and powerful in your own right, and also strong and powerful as part of the one. And then within that, you get to find your way around to my highest value, which is freedom,
mm,
right? We
yes,
came here to be free and joyful, not to, flagellate ourselves or
or other
damn,
people condemn
or
them,
other
yeah. Hmm.
people. Right, right. Not to abuse each other or punish or control
Hmm.
or yeah, and to, celebrate our diversity instead of trying to get everybody to be the same.
Yes, that's a huge one for me too.
Mhm.
We were talking before this live began about each of us is has a special offering that our viewers and those who watch the replay too can get free through the end of the month. And mine is a nature and nurture ebook I created that combines my best nature photography, which is one of my spiritual practices,
Mhm.
um, with quotes inspired by it to to convey that message that, in nature, we admire the beauty of diversity, all the different colors, shapes, sizes. And, one flower blooms earlier than another one, but we don't judge it better than the other one. Or we don't say, this colored flower is better than that colored flower, or any of that stuff in nature. So, why is it so hard for us to recognize that it's the same with human animals? You
Hmm.
know? And
Yeah.
that when we do learn to embrace our own uniqueness and see it as beautiful, then the next step is to see everyone else's beauty and our connectedness, and want to support that instead of get other people to believe what we do and do what we think they should.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Really great stuff.
Yeah, the first Zoom spiritual support group I led, which is this 6 weeks of 90-minute live sessions on Zoom where we talk about spiritual stuff. Um, I had one person who identified as a pagan, one was a witch, one was really into astrology. At least one more than one were into tarot cards. And it was wonderful for all of us to have these discussions and respect each other's beliefs and not try to say, "Oh, you better be careful, that could lead you down this evil path," or
I
"That's not
can't.
okay."
I can't tell you how many times I have done a tarot reading and somebody says, "You know, you're talking to the devil, right?" I'm like, come on. Yeah, it's that, and but human minds, our minds are so malleable. It's so easy for stuff to get in there, and we suddenly take it as truth, and we don't even remember how it got there, right? And so we just really have to be diligent and pay attention and be aware and mindful of what we're thinking and how we're being, and just keeping track and going, what's that? And being curious, right? We've
Yeah.
stopped questioning. We're like, oh, and stop thinking that ritual and rote and um, dogma is the same thing as spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
Like you
So
said earlier, we try to intellectualize everything instead of experiencing the divine and connecting
mhm,
with it. We want to explain it and talk about it instead of to it.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you want? I don't remember how long you said we have to chat. Did you?
We have until 3. I generally do an hour, if
Oh,
that
okay.
works for you.
Okay,
Some people can
sure.
only do 30 minutes, but yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about this stuff. So generally try to stick to an hour. But if you want to go ahead and share now, I know you are offering a wonderful free resource to listeners as well. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, that the Happy and Free on Purpose live course, which is pretty much it's based on the book, but it's a 20 lesson digital course, but each lesson is only about 20 minutes. And half of that is lessons and journaling. And, and when I say lesson, like, let me think of one of the first ones. One of the first ones is to just make a list of all the things that you love about your life right now, right? Just to get your brain started looking around for the positive. And when you can train your brain in this way, all kinds of crappy things can go on around you. And you'll never even notice because you're too busy looking for things that are pretty, looking for things that are enjoyable, right? So practices and exercises and things like that. And then each one has a little meditation that goes along with it. So you listen to a lesson for 10 minutes, you meditate for 10 minutes, and then you go on about your day. And again, it's 20 lessons, so you could do it in 20 days or 20 weeks or 20 hours,
Hmm.
however you want to do it. And I think you'll provide the link for that. But it addresses everything. It addresses your relationship with your body and with money and with food and with other people, and really just sort of teaches you how to be aware of your perspective and the decisions that you're making so that you're mastering the way your life is unfolding instead of being at the mercy of outside circumstances. So I'm proud of it. I love it, and I feel like it's less than 5 hours total, and 5 hours invested in your health, happiness, and freedom. It's I think is really good. Yeah. And so you're
Absolutely.
you'll provide the link, right? And the
I will share it in notes, and then when I post this replay on my page, um, I will put underneath it in writing the links, and you'll get a recording of this too, and you can do the same on your
okay.
page.
All
Um,
right. Very good. And use code word Wendy.
Yes, and that's Wendy with an I at the end. Remember, people spell it
That's
wrong all
it.
the time, which is understandable. And my code word is coupon code is Substack. So both of them are very easy to remember once you go to our linked pages to access them. And they're active until the end of April. So it is a
Okay.
limited time offer. We do normally charge for these things. So get them while they're free. And um, yeah, so
Yeah, that's awesome. So, and I think I mentioned this is kind of late for me. So if we could do 45 minutes, that would fit
sure,
into
whenever you
yes.
need to go is totally understandable.
Yeah. So
Um,
one thing
if
that am interested in as to what is going on in the world and with women in particular is how how do we how do the women that are out in the world at this moment that are suffering in a subtle way. Okay, so I'm having a hard time articulating this. There's severe spiritual trauma, right? There is severe abuse by spiritual authority figures. There's cults. There's really extreme. It's like, oh yeah, this is clearly spiritual trauma. The spiritual trauma that I had was I didn't identify it as that at all, and I still don't really. It was not so dramatic to me that it counts as trauma, but um it was very subtle, and it took me a really long time to unravel and figure that out. So what do you think are some of the clues that we can have women look for that might indicate that they have this information that was put in there by authority figures or spiritual authority figures or religious or anybody that is tampering with our self-esteem, that's tampering with our happiness? How can we help them figure that out?
Great, great question. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do label it spiritual abuse. As you said, it's not the same as, oh, I was sexually abused by a priest when I was younger, or I was in a cult and got, beaten every day or what anything like that. But it is definitely spiritual abuse to me. When there is an attempt to control someone else. So I one of my posts was about 3 questions to ask yourself before you believe someone who claims to speak for God. So one of the questions is, are you allowed to question what they say? Because the Bible is full of people who questioned God directly and who disobeyed God's direct orders, who we now consider heroes of the faith. Moses was like, send someone else, God. I'm not a good speaker. And Jonah literally like ran the opposite direction, was like, no, God, I'm not doing that. I don't want you to save those people. So I'm not going to go warn them. And there's a whole slew of examples like that of people who either disobeyed God or just like ranted at God, why aren't you doing anything to stop this evil? Or why did you let this happen?
Okay,
And so that's all okay.
I want to ask you a question really quickly though, because this is I don't believe that the Bible was meant to be read literally. I believe that it's all they're fables. They're not even examples. They are allegories. They're metaphors.
I would
So
say from my um, training of studying it in depth that it's a combination of a whole host of things. The Bible, of course, is numerous different books by different authors, and then
Mhm.
translated, edited by other people, et cetera, et cetera.
so
I
do
think
you
there are
think
some.
that Jonah was literally swallowed by a
No,
fish?
definitely not.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, so things like that, yeah, I think people that try to take everything literally or claim to, they really don't. And it's kind of humorous to me if I try to say to them, okay, open your Bible, let's look at the first 4 chapters of Genesis. There are 2 completely different stories about creation, like the order of animals and people being created and how it happened and all of that. So read this one and now read this one right after it and tell me how they can both be true. And people don't even want to look at it. They don't want to hear that there might possibly be, or obvious contradictions where one book says one thing, the other says the exact opposite. And
Hmm.
even Jesus says, you have heard it said, talking about what Christians now call the law of the Old Testament. um, but I say, and he taught an opposite message, like instead of an eye for an eye, turn the other cheek. Instead of you know just loving people who love you back, love your enemies, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think there's poetry in the Bible. There are um, stories that Jesus told that don't have an obvious one right interpretation. Um, and of course, even the historical events are told from the perspective of the people that won the war, or the whatever. So there is no one objective absolute truth.
Right. Okay.
But
All
so
right.
one question would be, to see, ask yourself, is this person actually spiritually helping me, or are they abusing me? Am I allowed to question their words?
Well, but what if you aren't? What if you are like me and you left the church behind decades ago, but you're still carrying the wounds? How do you identify where those came from if you?
I think identifying where they came from isn't necessarily important. What's important is healing them and challenging them. Because in the US, at least, the messages are so pervasive. It doesn't matter if you've ever been to church in your life. You have heard those messages. Maybe they weren't couched in religious terms, but every woman has heard or experienced sexual harassment, being told that rape victims brought it on themselves by the way they dressed. Those kinds of messages don't have to be religious. Their roots may go back to religion, but they're everywhere. And so
Mhm.
I think every woman has to overcome those beliefs of, my only value comes from my attractiveness to a man, my having children, being a good mother, um, and a whole host of other things associated with traditional gender roles that have limited women, that have controlled, subjugated women, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Same thing with gender identities, sexual orientation, racial stuff, all of it. We've internalized these messages, whether we realize it or not. And when we do realize it, that's when we begin to free ourselves and question them and say, wait a minute, no, I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm not evil all the time either. I'm
Right.
not inherently bad.
Mhm.
I make mistakes just like everyone else, but I also do good things that help people. And so it's just a process of self discovery. Again, there's no one way that I would try to come in and tell someone else what you were taught is wrong. They have to come to that realization. Nor would I claim what I know now is right. And once get enlightened and see this truth, you'll be healed. For
Mhm.
everyone, the healing journey is different. What they need to heal from is different. And the same beliefs that I consider spiritually toxic for someone else are helpful. I had a woman in a church who was told when her daughter was killed by a drunk driver that God needed another angel in heaven. And when she told me that, I said to her, if that happened to me and someone said that to my face, I would have to be physically restrained from punching them, probably. And she was shocked and she said, no, it was so comforting to me to think about that in that way, that there was some good coming out of it, or whatever. So again, who am I to say, no, that should not that should not comfort you, that should horrify you, that's bad theology. No, we each get to make that choice.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay.
But at the same time, the flip side of that is, I do think that it is important for all of us to acknowledge that hate is wrong, violence against another person um, is wrong. Self defense being a different story, perhaps, but not,
I'm
oh,
really
I feel like killing
careful.
someone today, or beating
I'm
them up.
careful about using right and wrong because mean, there's always context, and really, I mean, who judges what's right and wrong, right? And and across cultures, and across all kinds of different lines. I really try really hard to stay away from right and wrong, right?
But at the same time, I suspect that there are things that you would still like molesting a child, for instance. I'm guessing that you would still say that's wrong. There aren't circumstances in which it's a good thing to sexually abuse a child. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, no, I would never say that it's good, or I, the person who molests a child is still a divine being with
yes,
innate worth, and
yes.
they are not wrong. Their behavior is harmful and damaging and unwanted, and other negative terms, but there's no nuance in right and wrong. There's you're right, you're wrong. It's so black and white, and so judgmental. There's just no way that you can say right and wrong without it being a judgment, right?
Okay, yeah. Now, to be clear, I'm talking about judging behaviors, not
Okay.
people. That is
Okay.
a very important distinction. I 100% agree with you that we can't say this person is evil. We
Mm-hmm.
can say this particular thing they did harmed someone else and was not okay.
Yeah.
Um, but that doesn't mean that person is not still part of the human family, part of the God's family, how whatever language you want to use.
Yeah. So what is that? I think we're drifting away from what this means to spirituality. Is I think I've
Well, I think
gotten lost.
the connection is that um, for some people, spirituality includes that condemnation of others, blanket condemnation. It's not okay to be LGBTQ. It's not okay to be a woman who has teaching authority over men or is a minister, an ordained minister. Um, so any kind of blanket condemnation of other people and saying, okay, I get to decide, you know, what your religion is going to be or what the true religion is, um, or anything along those lines. I consider spiritual abuse.
Mm,
Basically, trying to force someone else to do what I think that God wants them to do, or believe what I consider the only acceptable belief. That to me is spiritual abuse and is a red flag warning sign immediately. And even if I happen to agree, like let's say that spiritual leader is preaching or saying, this is the candidate God wants to win the election or whatever. Um, Even if I agree with that person, I don't agree that it's ever appropriate to make a statement like that. And I would never agree that God favors one over the other. But I mean, if I supported that candidate, to clarify that, I would still not believe that it's okay to say that anyone who doesn't is a bad person.
mm-hmm. Yep. That makes perfect sense, and actually sort of common sense, and it kind of makes you wonder why that even is a conversation. When you think that everyone would just go, well, no, nobody can say that God thinks this, but
Exactly. We're
but
humans. We're not God.
right.
And all of us have a limited capacity. It's kind of like that story of the blind men feeling the elephant and trying to describe it, and they're each touching a different part, and so
Right.
their experience of it and their description of it is radically different from another
Mm-hmm.
one's.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that any of them are wrong. They are accurately describing the part that they are able to sense, understand, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the same applies to humans trying to comprehend or make sense of the divine.
Right.
There is a greater mystery, a greater wisdom that we can tap into, but we don't control or fully comprehend. It's beyond us.
Right. 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 Cool. Very lovely. This has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this stuff, and you are too. And I love talking about it. Really quickly, because I know it's late for you and you need to go, I would love for you to say a little bit about your women's circles, your fierce and what do you call them, fierce and free.
Fierce and Free Women's Circle, yeah. So on Wednesdays, and I am all over the world. So my zone is changing all the time. So I've just been trying to use Eastern time because it's kind of in the middle of everything. So at noon Eastern time on Wednesdays, we have a free women's circle. It started out like a master class. Um, but it's a circle. So I will teach a little bit about whatever the topic is. Last week was um, releasing your inner rebel and honoring your inner rebel. And the first week we talked about um, hunger and the way that we soothe ourselves or numb ourselves with alcohol, with food, with distractions, with um, all kinds of outside things instead of just sitting with what we feel and acknowledging what we're really hungry for. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about, and I hold the space and I bring a little bit of education and just sharing of some of the things that I've learned. But then we're a circle of wise women sharing our experiences and shining a light on one another and holding up a mirror and just uplifting and supporting. And it's brand new, but it's already very fantastic. And so far it is called the Fierce and Free Circle. But I reserve the right to change that name anytime I like.
Well,
Yeah.
it sounds wonderful, and actually in a lot of ways similar to my spiritual support group, except that mine is a private closed group limited to 12 people so that I can ensure it's safe for LGBTQ people and for spiritual conversations about things that some conservative religious people would not be okay with and would shame people for. Um, but same kind of thing. I'm a peer. I participate in the discussion. I get as much out of it as everyone else does. I'm not the expert
Mhm.
who comes in and says, this is what you need to believe, you know. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
so wonderful. I appreciate your time, especially since it's later where you are,
Yeah.
talking with me. And anything else that you would like to add before you need to go?
um I think that I mean we talked about a lot of stuff, but there's still so much that is to share. And I also offer a free clarity call that I like to call a circle of two for those, when you don't really want to be in a group hashing things out, but you need a sounding board. And
Mhm.
so that I offer those as well. So that's something that it's very easy to find. I put it on just everywhere. So yeah.
And
Oh,
we
and
didn't
be
mention
sure
this,
to.
but your Substack is Everyday Magic,
Hmm.
correct?
Yes, my Substack is Everyday Magic, and again, do the Happy and Free on Purpose life course for free, and it's downloadable, and you have access to it forever, as long as, or for as long as that website lives. Yeah.
But only free for through the end of April.
Oh,
So get it
right,
now. Yes.
right.
And
Only
and we
free
will
through the end of April.
I'll put the links. I'll share that in a note, and also, underneath this replay when I publish it on my page, and encourage you to do the same. I'll text you my link. Um, so yes, thank you
Sounds
again for
great.
your time. It's always
Absolutely.
wonderful to discuss things with kindred spirits who are passionate
Mhm.
about um, making the world better by just encouraging people to embrace their authentic selves
Mhm.
and sharing how doing that has liberated us.
Yeah.
So have a
It's
wonderful
just
evening, and thank you
awesome.
for being here.
Thank you, Wendy. It was great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. And thank you to everyone who has watched this or will watch the replay later. And thank you to all of the wonderful writers who have done Substack Lives with me already and are scheduled to through the end of May, and the long list of others who have expressed interest that are on a waiting list. Right now, I'm not able to accept any new requests because I want to work through my long list of people I've already committed to. But I anticipate continuing to do these lives because I just love them. Um, and it's invigorating for me. It's something I'm passionate about, and it's more of a communication conversation than just me writing words on a page. So, thank you all again, And there will be another one coming up next week, next Wednesday, and I'll share more about that in notes with another awesome writer. But again, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Bye.